Hi, WMCW here. Today we're going to talk about a reasonably topical issue and probably a very, very controversial one. Rape. So basically I want to say outright, rape is a bad thing and no one's going to support it. But recently it's reached the media because I think a Canadian policeman who was giving a talk to some students at a high school, I believe. I don't actually know much about this issue, but it's cropped up a couple of times. Has been censured and criticised widely throughout the world because he was promoting something that, well, he was claimed to be promoting something along the lines of, victim blaming, where you actually say that the person who is responsible for the rape is in fact the person who was raped. And I think his message was something along the lines of, don't dress like sluts, your chances of being raped will go up. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but this is essentially the message that is being, put out there. And of course, the controversy comes from the fact that this message supposedly promotes the idea that the victim is to blame for the rape and not the rapist, which is obviously not appropriate. No one should blame the victims of rape for what's happened to them. The thing that I think has been missed in this is that there is two elements to this. There is the rape action, there's the actual incidence of rape, and that is entirely the fault of, and the person to blame is the rapist. No one is going to say, well, I don't think anyone is actually going out there and saying that, the person to blame is actually the girl who got raped. That's wrong. But there's another element to it, not only the incident, but it's the creation of the circumstances that led to that incident. And that sometimes can be the fault of the victim. And it's an important one to recognise that you can create circumstances whereby you actually do increase your chances of being raped. We use an analogy, if you have a house and you leave all the windows open and you don't lock the door and you leave it for days or weeks at a time to go on holiday, and you forget to cancel your newspaper subscription so they start piling up outside the door, you have created a circumstance where you are more likely to get burgled and robbed than the neighbours who have stayed at home and have locked the doors and locked the windows and have collected their newspapers and installed security around. Two people have created circumstances whereby the chances of being the victims of crime are different. And that's really, really clear. And it's, an insurance company or anybody who's looking at that will go, yeah, actually, this has more likely, this house has got more likelihood of being robbed than its neighbour. Likewise, if you go out and you dress like a slut and you get completely half-cut, for American viewers, if you get completely drunk or wasted, whatever, and you stumble around on your own at 3 o'clock in the morning without, appropriate clothing and without a real sense of direction or where you're going outside nightclubs, you are actually creating an environment in which you are more likely to be raped than if you stay with your friends, drink sensibly, go home at sensible times, and go with a taxi rather than an unlicensed minicab. You are actually creating an environment where it's more likely that you're going to have some harm done to you, possibly rape, possibly sexual molestation, or whatever it is. You are actually contributing to the creation of that environment. Now, no one is saying that it's okay that somebody goes and takes advantage of you, or somebody in that circumstance. That's obviously not what anyone's saying. No one's saying it's okay. It's also entirely the fault of the perpetrator, the rapist or what have you. They're the ones to blame. And there's no way it is appropriate to say, oh, well, we'll give them less of a sentence, or we'll have a slightly less chance of actually getting a conviction because of the circumstances surrounding the victim. That's inappropriate, and it's not appropriate to say we will actually be more lenient, or we will be, it will be harder to try this case, or what have you. None of that is appropriate. The blame is still entirely with the perpetrator. However, the creation of the circumstances surrounding it is the responsibility of the victim. And until we create a society where women can go anywhere and do anything they want in any sort of behaviour and it's all acceptable, that would be lovely. I would actually really approve of a society where, everyone felt safe all the time. That's obviously the goal that we should be striving for as a world, that no one should feel victimized, no one should be the victim of crime. And we don't live in that world. Right now, we genuinely have dangerous areas and dangerous situations. And if you wantonly and knowingly put yourself in those dangerous situations and dangerous areas, yes, some of the responsibility for what may happen to you does lie with you, because it's entirely foreseeable. This stuff is not rocket science. Don't get half naked. Don't wander around in the streets at night. Don't stay on your own. Don't go into unlicensed minicabs. The reason I bring this up actually is because it was in the papers recently in the UK, where this woman, I think it was a local councillor or somebody, was complaining bitterly because she said, we are blaming the victims, and it's all a rape victim culture and all that. And the evidence she used to back up this statement was the fact that she had seen in the tube these posters that said, do not get into an unlicensed minicab late at night because rape happens. Again, I paraphrase, but that's something along those lines. And she said, that's wrong. Why are we telling the women to not get into unlicensed minicabs? Where are the posters that say, to dear unlicensed minicab drivers, please don't rape women? Where do you start with a conversation like this? Obviously this is a facetious argument. No one is going to read, who is a rapist, is going to read a poster and go, a poster, maybe I shouldn't rape the victims or rape the people who are in my cab. That's a bad thing. I will not do that now. No one's going to have that sort of reaction to a poster. However, you might well find that people who are vulnerable and going home at night may have the choice between a registered minicab and unregistered minicab, or a black cab, or something that's, and if there are degrees of safety, black cab, minicab, unlicensed minicab, there is a spectrum here to work with. Obviously, we want to encourage people to go with the safer one, and we are far more likely to actually affect the behaviour of the potential victims and thereby avoid the crime than we are to actually put a poster up to prevent the crime by targeting the criminals. It's not blaming the victim. It's not saying it's okay that you were raped because you put yourself out there. That's obviously wrong. It's wrong that you're raped. It's wrong that these things happen to you. However, if you had the option of doing something safe and doing something unsafe, you have to be aware that some of the blame for the creation of the circumstances that led to the event falls on you. None of the blame for the event itself, none of the circumstances that led up to that should be mitigating factors in the trying, catching and convicting of the criminal. However, you can put yourself in danger and you can stay safe. And the message that we need to get out there is, please try and stay safe. It's not okay to do certain things. And until we live in that wonderful world where you can do anything and feel safe no matter what you do, until we live there, and I'm sure we don't, until we live in that world, you have to make better choices. And I'm sorry, but this Canadian policeman is probably right when he says, don't dress like sluts and don't make stupid decisions. There may be consequences. There may be consequences. And the people who say that that is a bad message, I'm sorry, I just don't agree with you. Anyway, so controversial topic. Those are my views. This is WMCW signing out. Cheers.